When I grew up, we had fried chicken every single Sunday after church, and we haven't had it forever around here because we do a lot of meals where we use less meat. But today I decided to make chicken breasts, and we really enjoyed those with some baked potato and some basil. My husband had some cottage cheese. We had cherry tomatoes that we had with it, and it was an absolutely delicious Sunday meal. And yes, you can eat the flowers on your basil plants. Hi everyone, I'm Bonita from rural Kansas, and I am early retired. I retired early at almost 58 years old in October of 2023. I am now 60 years old. I am riding it out until Social Security kicks in, and I love frugal living. I share tips and tricks on this channel, and it has afforded me the opportunity and choices to have the freedom that I wanted at an earlier age. I hope you enjoy this video. I got to pick up the Possum Living book from our local library. Our library is a little over 20 miles away each direction, and I was able to finally pick this up. So this was written back in 1976, 1978 by an 18-year-old girl who lived with her dad, and they lived on the bare minimum. It is how to live well without a job and almost no money. So I found parts of this very, very interesting because I could identify with some of the parts because I was raised very, very frugally. Now, my dad was a small farmer. Before I was ever born, he worked a couple of years somewhere, and he told me he didn't like working for other people. So he farmed. He was in a long line of descendants that had farmed, and he preferred working for himself, even if it meant that we had to pinch pennies. He saw that as a way of freedom. My mom didn't work until I was in junior high, and then she worked nights at a foundry. She worked there for several years, and usually my mom helped him on the farm. So we only got money when we sold our wheat or when we sold alfalfa or things like that. Other than that, that was all the money we had the whole year long, and we had to make it stretch. And my mom kept track of every penny coming in the house and every penny going out of the house, just like they did in this book and just like I do now. Now, most of my years raising my children, I kept a checkbook balance and a savings balance, but I spent a lot in cash, and I never kept track of what I spent in cash. Once I had it in cash, I kind of figured it was already gone, and I didn't really track that to the penny like I do today. Today, I track every single penny just like they did in this book. This is a very famous book, and you've probably heard about it maybe from some other frugal channels, but I had always wanted to read it. It was not on the Libby app where I could get it from my small local library, but my small local library did have it in print, and it's like new, like no one has ever read it. So if you have the chance to pick it up, it is some really interesting reading. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about some of the ways that I was raised. And I know that I've shared a little bit on this channel about how frugal my parents were, but there were a lot of traits that they had and a lot of things they instilled in me that I still do today that we don't always think about because they just become part of how I do things or how I am. One of the things is my mom taught me to eat popcorn one kernel at a time. I don't know if she was worried about me choking because popcorn is a huge thing that children choke on, or if it was just to make it last longer. I would probably guess that is more why she had me eat it one kernel at a time. And I still do that today. And my husband and I visited about it the other day, and he said, I've always saw you do that. I always thought it was weird. And I said, well, that's because that's how my mom trained me. That's how my mom taught me to eat it. And I still eat it like that. And you know, it does make it last longer. It makes it where I can enjoy it longer and it's not gone just lickety split. So there's lots of little things like that that were ingrained in me and taught to me that I don't think about, that I still do. One of the things that I've noticed that is so different than the way I was raised is we did not even answer the door. If we were in pajamas, our nightgown, our robe, or we had our hair in curlers or rollers, we did not answer the door. If someone was at the door, we hid away and pretended we were not home. Being dressed like that or having your hair in rollers was considered an intimate way for others to see you. And unless it was your own family, it was not appropriate for a neighbor to see you looking like that. Nowadays, you go to the store and you see people in pajamas, you see people in wearing all kinds of things like that, that you know that they slept in. And I still can't get used to that because I still am the type where if someone knocks on the door and I'm not completely out of my night clothes, I scurry away to another room, and if my husband's home, I'll let him answer the door, but I don't let them see me until I am appropriate to see someone outside of the family. And that was just instilled in me, and it's something I still do. It's something that I don't think I will ever change. Let me know if you were raised like this and if you know what I'm talking about. Ironing was also a big part of my adolescent life. I was responsible for ironing the pillow slips, the handkerchiefs, anything that was square and flat was my job, probably by the time I was age 10 or 11. Nowadays, many people don't ever pull out the iron. But when I was talking to my mother-in-law the other day, she was even responsible for ironing the sheets. I know older ladies that ironed their husband's jeans and made sure that crease was in the front of them. That's why I've showed you several times when I hang clothes on the line that I hang them seam to make sure that that crease is in there, because that is another thing that I grew up with, is having that crease in the front of your pants. So there are some older things like that that are still working their way into my modern life, but I no longer iron pillowcases or handkerchiefs. But it was a big deal back then to have everything completely pressed, completely smooth, no wrinkles, and everything was to be crisp. That was a way to show that it was clean. And those things I still think about from time to time. Did you grow up ironing? Ironing has fallen by the wayside. I still have a couple of irons. I've never been super great at ironing clothing, but I've done it plenty of times. I had skirts over the years that I've had to iron, but I try really hard not to buy anything now that I do need to iron. And I think we all remember the pantyhose phase. That lasted for many, many years. When I grew up, I wore knee socks as a young girl, and with my dresses, that was considered appropriate. But I couldn't wait for the age that I was old enough to wear pantyhose, because that meant I was a lady. I was a woman. I was grown up. And for most of my adult career days, I wore pantyhose. It's only been in the last few years that I've stopped wearing pantyhose with a dress, because most people do not wear it anymore. It's considered very, very annoying. The runs would be there and you would, snag the hose, and you'd have to carry clear nail polish with you to try to stop the run so you could make it through the day until you could put on a new pair tomorrow. I even had a subscription at one time to get so many pairs of pantyhose per month while I was working professional jobs to make sure I always had enough pantyhose at any given time. Because back then, wearing a dress without pantyhose as a woman would have been considered scandalous, and you would not have gone out without pantyhose under your dress. Same with slips. We always wore slips under our dress. Even if you couldn't see through them, it didn't matter. You were to wear a slip under your dress. I still have a lot of half slips, but when I grew up, I had a lot of full slips from the top to the bottom, and they were always worn under dresses. I also grew up with tray tables. Now, these were not used just to sit in front of the TV and eat. We did not eat in front of the TV. We ate at the kitchen table. Even if you were home by yourself on a summer day, you sat at the kitchen table to eat your meals. But these were pulled out if there was company. And that's when these were used if you didn't have enough room at the table. We had so many family members here over the Christmas holiday that our table and our card table was full of people. So I pulled out some of these tray tables, and my oldest son-in-law sat at one of the tray tables, and he said, "Man, this brings back memories. I grew up with these. My parents would pull them out, and we would have TV dinners and eat off of them." And his parents are probably 10 to 12 years older than I am, because he's the youngest and he married my daughter, who's the oldest. And so he still remembered the tray tables, and he just thought that was like a blast from the past, and he really enjoyed sitting at that tray table. And I grew up in an old schoolhouse. We moved there when I was 5 years old from the farm because the farm had nitrate water. My dad built in rooms that were in the back of the school building that was just all open because it had been the science building, and it had lots of room for people to just do things on tables or what have you. We didn't have any heat in our bedrooms growing up. You could see your breath whenever you breathed, and we didn't have any heat in any part of the house except for the living room. We had a space heater in the bathroom, which is basically how I still live now. I have a propane stove in the living room and a space heater in the bathroom in the wintertime. We only turned it on when we took showers. We still do that today. And we didn't have air conditioning. And even today, we use very little air conditioning. So these were some of the ways that we did possum living when I was growing up. We stretched things. We did things just as minimal and as inexpensive as we possibly could. We ate really well. My dad hunted and brought in all kinds of game, of which I was not a fan. So usually I ate a lot of the bread and vegetables that were offered at the meals. My mom did a lot of canning and preserving. We picked a lot of berries, apples, all kinds of things like that. And then she would prepare them. We had a large garden. She canned beans. She canned tomatoes. We had all kinds of things that came out of the garden, and that sustained us for the year until the next cycle where we could do it again. So I was raised very, very frugally, very, very old fashioned, and that's where I am most comfortable. So when you watch this channel and you wonder, like, how does she live like that? I'm comfortable in this environment because that's how I was raised, and I really didn't change a lot as I grew up. I started buying some extra pretties and things for the walls, and then over time, I realized how much money those pretties cost, how much dusting they required, and was it really something that I wanted to spend my spare time managing and taking care of? And that's where I've been over the last several years, is trying to downsize a lot of the things I've accumulated over the years, because going back to that possum living looks really, really good when you hit your 50s. So let me know some of the things that you grew up with. I might have missed quite a few in describing my childhood to you, but I always appreciate the time that you spend with me. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and I hope you'll join me for another one.